Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, summarized by Detailed Book Summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family. Chapter 1. Desire, the starting point of all achievement. Napoleon Hill begins Think and Grow Rich by establishing desire as the foundational force behind every meaningful achievement. Not wishful thinking, not idle hope, but a burning, obsessive desire that dominates the mind and directs action with unwavering intensity. According to Hill, all great fortunes, breakthroughs, and accomplishments can be traced back to a single origin, a clearly defined desire that an individual refused to abandon, regardless of obstacles or temporary defeat. This chapter is less about money itself and more about the internal ignition that makes extraordinary success possible. Hill challenges the common assumption that wealth is reserved for the lucky, the educated, or the privileged. Instead, he reframes success as a consequence of mental discipline. Desire, in his view, is the emotional fuel that activates the subconscious mind and compels it to search relentlessly for ways to achieve a specific goal. Without this inner fire, effort becomes weak, inconsistent, and easily defeated by fear or discouragement. With it, even limited resources can be transformed into stepping stones toward success. A key insight in this chapter is the insistence on definiteness. Hill argues that vague desires produce vague results. Many people claim they want to be rich, successful, or free, yet they fail to specify what those words mean in concrete terms. Such undefined longings lack the power to move the mind into decisive action. Hill insists that one must know exactly how much they want, what they are willing to give in return, and the deadline by which they intend to achieve it. This clarity turns desire from a passive emotion into an active plan. To reinforce this principle, Hill presents desire as something that must be written, repeated, and emotionally charged. The act of writing down a goal forces the mind to confront it as something real rather than imaginary. Repetition, especially when done with feeling, imprints the goal onto the subconscious, which then begins to influence behavior, decisions, and perception. Over time, the mind becomes attuned to opportunities that align with the stated desire, often in ways the individual could not have consciously planned. Hill emphasizes that desire must be backed by sacrifice. Every achievement demands a price, and those who are unwilling to pay it reveal the weakness of their desire. The willingness to exchange time, comfort, habits, or even ego for the attainment of a goal is what separates dreamers from achievers. Hill is clear that the universe does not reward intention alone. It responds to commitment expressed through action. Desire that does not compel one to act decisively and persistently is, in his framework, not true desire at all. Another powerful theme in this chapter is the transformation of failure. Hill introduces the idea that temporary defeat is not the opposite of success, but a necessary companion to it. Those driven by intense desire interpret failure differently. Instead of seeing it as a signal to quit, they treat it as feedback, redirection, or a test of commitment. Hill suggests that many people fail not because they lack ability, but because they abandon their goals at the first sign of resistance. Desire, when strong enough, redefines obstacles as challenges to be overcome rather than reasons to retreat. Hill also explores the emotional intensity behind desire. He makes it clear that intellectual acceptance of a goal is insufficient. Desire must be felt deeply, emotionally, and personally. It must occupy the mind so fully that it crowds out doubt, fear, and indecision. This emotional engagement is what gives desire its creative power. When the mind is emotionally invested in a goal, it begins to operate differently, more alert, more resourceful, and more resilient. The chapter subtly introduces the concept of self-responsibility. Hill does not attribute success to chance, fate, or external conditions. Instead, he places full responsibility on the individual's ability to cultivate and maintain desire. This can be uncomfortable as it removes excuses, but it is also empowering. If success begins with desire, then anyone, regardless of background, has access to the starting point. The only requirement is the courage to decide what one truly wants and the discipline to pursue it relentlessly. Hill's philosophy also warns against half-hearted ambition. He argues that society is filled with people who want success, but are not willing to reorganize their lives around it. These individuals may work hard intermittently, but their efforts lack consistency because their desire is diluted by competing priorities. True desire, Hill explains, demands focus. It requires the individual to eliminate distractions and align daily actions with long-term objectives. Underlying this entire chapter is a profound belief in the power of the mind. Hill suggests that thoughts backed by desire become magnetized, attracting circumstances, people, and ideas that contribute to their realization. While this may seem abstract, Hill grounds it in practical behavior. Focused individuals notice opportunities others overlook, take risks others avoid, and persist where others surrender. In this sense, desire reshapes reality not through magic, but through disciplined perception and action. By the end of Chapter 1, Hill has firmly established desire as the seed from which all success grows. He does not offer shortcuts or guarantees, but he provides a principle that is both demanding and accessible. The reader is left with a challenge: to examine their own ambitions and ask whether they are truly defined, emotionally charged, and backed by a willingness to pay the price. Without desire, all other principles in the book are powerless. With it, even the most daunting goals become achievable. Chapter 2. Faith, visualizing and believing in the attainment of desire. In the second chapter of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill advances from the raw energy of desire into the sustaining power that keeps desire alive and effective. Faith. Where desire provides direction and motivation, faith supplies conviction. Hill defines faith not as blind religious belief, but as a state of mind that can be deliberately cultivated through disciplined thinking, repetition, and emotional reinforcement. It is the inner certainty that what one has decided upon is already in the process of becoming real. Without faith, desire weakens under pressure. With faith, it gains resilience, confidence, and momentum. Hill makes it clear that faith is not something reserved for the naturally optimistic or spiritually inclined. Instead, it is a mental attitude that can be developed by anyone who understands how the subconscious mind operates. At the center of this chapter is the idea that thoughts which are repeatedly impressed upon the subconscious mind, especially when charged with emotion, eventually influence beliefs, habits, and actions. Faith, therefore, is not accidental. It is the result of intentional mental conditioning. The subconscious mind plays a central role in Hill's philosophy. He explains that the subconscious does not reason or judge the truth of ideas fed into it. It accepts whatever is repeatedly impressed upon it, particularly when those impressions are accompanied by strong feeling. This means that fear, doubt, and limitation can become deeply rooted beliefs if they are allowed to dominate one's thinking. Conversely, confidence, courage, and faith can also be planted and nurtured through deliberate mental practice. The difference between successful and unsuccessful individuals often lies in which ideas they have consistently reinforced within their minds. Hill introduces the practice of autosuggestion as the bridge between conscious desire and subconscious belief. Autosuggestion involves the repeated, emotional affirmation of a clearly defined goal. By stating one's objective aloud, with confidence and feeling, and visualizing its fulfillment, the individual gradually conditions the subconscious mind to accept that outcome as possible and expected. Over time, this inner acceptance manifests externally through increased confidence, improved decision-making, and more decisive action. A critical insight in this chapter is that faith and fear cannot coexist in the mind at the same time. One will always dominate the other. Fear, Hill argues, is a learned response, often inherited through social conditioning, negative experiences, or repeated exposure to pessimistic ideas. Left unchecked, fear undermines initiative, weakens persistence, and distorts perception. Faith, on the other hand, neutralizes fear by replacing uncertainty with expectation. The cultivation of faith is therefore not just about believing in success, but about actively uprooting doubt. Hill emphasizes that faith grows through action as much as through thought. While mental conditioning lays the foundation, faith is strengthened when individuals act in alignment with their stated goals. Each step taken reinforces belief, creating a feedback loop between thought and behavior. When action produces results, even small ones, confidence increases, which in turn fuels further action. In this way, faith becomes self-reinforcing, transforming hesitation into decisiveness. The chapter also explores the role of imagination in building faith. Hill suggests that the mind must first see success internally before it can be achieved externally. Visualization is not a passive fantasy, but a purposeful rehearsal of achievement. By vividly imagining the realization of a goal, individuals emotionally experience success in advance. This emotional experience signals the subconscious mind to treat the goal as attainable, thereby aligning internal beliefs with external effort. Hill draws attention to the influence of environment and mental diet on faith. The ideas one consumes, through conversations, reading, and media, either strengthen belief or weaken it. Surrounding oneself with pessimism, criticism, and doubt erodes faith, while exposure to positive, achievement-oriented thinking reinforces it. Hill subtly warns that many people sabotage their own success by allowing negative influences to dominate their mental space. Faith requires protection. It must be guarded against corrosive ideas just as carefully as physical health is protected against disease. Another important dimension of faith discussed in this chapter is self-confidence. Hill suggests that faith in oneself is the starting point for faith in any external goal. Individuals who doubt their own abilities struggle to commit fully to their desires, often retreating at the first sign of difficulty. Self-confidence, however, is not arrogance or overestimation of ability. It is the calm assurance that one can learn, adapt, and persist until success is achieved. This assurance grows as individuals keep promises to themselves and act consistently with their stated intentions. Hill also connects faith to leadership and influence. People who possess faith naturally inspire confidence in others. Their certainty, clarity, and calmness under pressure attract support, cooperation, and opportunity. In contrast, indecision and self-doubt repel assistance. Faith, therefore, is not only a private mental state, but a public force that shapes how others respond. Leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators all rely on faith to carry their vision forward when tangible proof is not yet visible. Throughout the chapter, Hill reinforces the idea that faith precedes evidence. Waiting for external confirmation before believing guarantees stagnation, because progress requires action in uncertain conditions. Faith allows individuals to move forward without complete information, trusting that clarity will emerge through engagement rather than hesitation. This principle challenges conventional thinking, which often demands certainty before commitment. Hill argues that certainty is usually the result of action, not its prerequisite. The chapter also touches on the moral neutrality of faith. Hill notes that faith is a power that can be used constructively or destructively, depending on the ideas it supports. History provides examples of individuals who achieved influence or wealth through faith in harmful objectives. This observation serves as a reminder that faith amplifies intention. It does not judge it. Responsibility, therefore, lies with the individual to direct faith toward goals that are constructive and meaningful. By the conclusion of Chapter 2, Hill has elevated faith from a vague concept to a practical mental tool. It is no longer presented as a mysterious force possessed by a fortunate few, but as a skill that can be learned and strengthened through repetition, emotional engagement, and disciplined action. Faith transforms desire from a hopeful wish into a confident expectation, giving the individual the courage to persist when results are delayed and challenges intensify. Chapter 3. Autosuggestion, the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. In the third chapter of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill introduces a principle that bridges the gap between conscious desire and tangible achievement: autosuggestion. If Chapter 1 establishes desire as the starting point, and Chapter 2 positions faith as the sustaining force, autosuggestion is the mechanism through which these internal powers communicate with the subconscious mind to produce action and, ultimately, results. Hill presents autosuggestion as the art of feeding the mind with deliberate, repeated, and emotionally charged instructions so that it begins to accept them as truth. Once accepted, these ideas begin to shape behavior, influence decisions, and attract circumstances that make their fulfillment possible. Hill opens the chapter by noting that most people fail because their desires are weak and unorganized, and their minds are filled with fear, doubt, and conflicting messages. Autosuggestion is the method for overcoming these obstacles. Unlike ordinary thinking, which is scattered and easily swayed by external influences, autosuggestion is intentional. It uses repetition, affirmation, and imagination to impress goals upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not distinguish between reality and vividly imagined experience. It acts upon what it accepts as true. This makes autosuggestion a powerful tool for reprogramming limiting beliefs into empowering ones. The principle of autosuggestion rests on 3 pillars: clarity, repetition, and emotion. First, one must be clear about exactly what is desired. Vague statements such as, "I want to be rich someday," are ineffective because the subconscious requires precision. Hill insists that desires be specific in both quantity and nature, and ideally expressed in writing. Second, these desires must be repeated consistently, not just occasionally. Daily repetition, particularly when coupled with visualization and feeling, creates a mental habit. Third, emotion is essential. The subconscious responds to intensity. Ideas impressed upon it with strong feeling are more likely to influence belief and behavior than dry, detached thoughts. Hill provides a practical method for applying autosuggestion. Write down a clear statement of your goal, read it aloud twice daily, and visualize yourself already in possession of what you desire. As you do this, you must feel the emotions of success, the satisfaction, pride, and joy of achievement. This combination of thought, verbal affirmation, and emotional experience conditions the subconscious to accept the goal as attainable. Over time, this acceptance manifests in improved decision-making, heightened awareness of opportunities, and the courage to act decisively. A critical insight in this chapter is the recognition of the subconscious mind as both a servant and a potential adversary. It obeys the dominant thoughts and emotions with which it is fed. Negative, fear-based, or self-limiting ideas are absorbed just as easily as positive, empowering ones. Hill warns that most failures are the result of individuals allowing external influences, negative opinions, social conditioning, and fear to dominate their subconscious programming. Autosuggestion becomes the antidote to these influences by replacing them with deliberate, constructive beliefs that align with one's goals. Hill also emphasizes that autosuggestion is not a one-time exercise, but a continual process. The mind is like a garden. If weeds of doubt, fear, and indecision are allowed to grow, they choke the seeds of success. Daily reinforcement through autosuggestion keeps the mind focused, disciplined, and oriented toward opportunities rather than obstacles. It creates a mental environment where desire, faith, and imagination can operate effectively. Another significant dimension Hill addresses is the interplay between autosuggestion and persistence. By repeatedly impressing the subconscious with goals and positive expectations, individuals develop the habit of persistence. When challenges arise, their conditioned belief system resists discouragement and compels continued effort. Autosuggestion, therefore, not only programs the mind for success, but also strengthens resilience against setbacks. Persistence becomes a natural byproduct of sustained mental conditioning. Hill links autosuggestion directly to self-confidence and initiative. When individuals feed their subconscious with affirmations of ability and expectation of success, they begin to act with greater decisiveness and courage. Hesitation, procrastination, and fear diminish because the mind has been trained to anticipate achievement rather than failure. This is particularly important in an environment of uncertainty, where bold action often distinguishes winners from those who remain stagnant. The chapter also highlights the importance of integrating imagination into autosuggestion. Hill encourages the reader to visualize goals as already accomplished, to imagine the sensations, environment, and interactions associated with success. This emotional rehearsal triggers the subconscious to create strategies, recognize opportunities, and align behavior with the envisioned outcome. The mind, once convinced that a goal is achievable, naturally seeks ways to achieve it, often revealing creative solutions that conscious thinking alone might overlook. Hill stresses that autosuggestion is neither mystical nor magical. It is a psychological process rooted in human behavior and thought patterns. The effectiveness of autosuggestion depends on consistency, emotional intensity, and clarity of purpose. It requires discipline and conscious effort. Yet the results are profound. Individuals who master this practice find themselves more focused, confident, and capable of translating desire into reality. Finally, Hill cautions that the power of autosuggestion can be misused or wasted if goals are contradictory or insincere. The subconscious mind acts upon what it accepts as dominant and real. Therefore, the ideas fed into it must be coherent, focused, and genuinely aligned with one's deepest desires. Half-hearted efforts, conflicting ambitions, or insincere affirmations dilute the process and produce little effect. Success through autosuggestion demands alignment between conscious desire, emotional belief, and repeated affirmation. By the conclusion of Chapter 3, Hill has presented autosuggestion as the practical bridge between thought and action. Desire initiates the journey, faith sustains it, and autosuggestion programs the mind to act in harmony with both. It is a disciplined, repeatable method for transforming abstract ambition into concrete achievement. For Hill, autosuggestion is more than a mental exercise. It is a fundamental law of success, enabling the subconscious mind to become a powerful ally in the pursuit of wealth, personal fulfillment, and mastery of one's life. Chapter 4. Specialized knowledge, personal experiences, or observations. In Chapter 4 of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill shifts the focus from internal mental conditioning to external application, emphasizing the critical role of knowledge in transforming desire into tangible results. He introduces the concept of specialized knowledge, explaining that general knowledge, what most people acquire through standard education or casual reading, has little value in producing wealth unless it is organized and applied toward a definite purpose. Hill asserts that success does not come merely from what you know, but from how you use what you know to serve a goal. Knowledge, in his philosophy, is only power when it is intelligently directed. Hill begins by addressing a common misconception, that formal education guarantees financial or professional success. He observes that many highly educated individuals fail financially because they possess information without knowing how to convert it into practical results. Conversely, he points out that countless successful people have accumulated wealth without advanced schooling because they have harnessed specialized knowledge, applied it strategically, and leveraged it with the help of others. This distinction between passive knowledge and applied knowledge is central to Hill's teaching. Specialized knowledge, Hill explains, is knowledge that is acquired for a specific purpose and is directly relevant to one's goals. It may be technical, professional, or experiential, and it can come from formal education, self-study, work experience, or personal observation. The key is focus. Knowledge must be deliberately chosen, accumulated, and organized to serve a clearly defined objective. Hill contrasts this with general knowledge, which may enrich the mind or provide cultural literacy, but rarely produces financial results unless it is purposefully applied. A major insight in this chapter is the principle of organization of knowledge. Hill notes that knowledge alone, no matter how vast, is not sufficient. Success requires the intelligent organization of information and its application through practical planning. The ability to take ideas, combine them, and execute them effectively separates those who accumulate wealth from those who simply accumulate facts. In other words, specialized knowledge becomes powerful only when applied to the solution of problems, creation of products, or provision of services that satisfy demand. Hill also emphasizes the importance of continuous learning. The world is constantly changing, and knowledge that is valuable today may become obsolete tomorrow. He encourages readers to cultivate a habit of lifelong learning, seeking out opportunities to expand and refine their expertise. However, he stresses that learning must be strategic and targeted toward goals. Indiscriminate accumulation of information is ineffective. Specialized knowledge must be functional, relevant, and actionable. Another essential concept introduced in this chapter is the power of collaboration and the mastermind, a principle that will be elaborated in later chapters, but is closely linked to specialized knowledge. Hill explains that one person rarely possesses all the knowledge necessary to achieve complex goals. By associating with others who have complementary skills and expertise, individuals can access knowledge beyond their own and apply it more effectively. In this sense, specialized knowledge is not limited to personal learning. It can be acquired through partnerships, mentorships, and networks. The key is to recognize gaps in one's own knowledge and strategically seek expertise to fill them. Hill provides several practical guidelines for applying specialized knowledge. First, identify areas where knowledge can be converted into practical advantage. Second, focus on fields where you have natural interest or aptitude, as passion enhances learning and persistence. Third, remain open to unconventional sources of knowledge, including self-study, apprenticeships, and real-world experience. Hill underscores that sometimes knowledge gained outside formal education can be more valuable than degrees or certifications because it is tailored to real-world problems and applications. A recurring theme in the chapter is the distinction between knowledge and imagination. Knowledge, even when specialized, is inert without creative application. Hill emphasizes that the mind must use knowledge as raw material, combining it with ideas, initiative, and decision-making to produce wealth. Specialized knowledge provides the tools, but imagination and organized action determine whether those tools create value. For example, a person may understand marketing techniques, but without innovative application and strategic action, the knowledge alone does not generate results. Hill also discusses the importance of timing in applying knowledge. Knowledge must be applied when opportunities arise and in alignment with demand. Accumulating expertise without acting renders it largely ineffective. Action, guided by desire and faith, transforms knowledge into power. This underscores a broader theme in the book, that success is a combination of mental preparation and timely, decisive action. Knowledge prepares the mind, but execution produces results. Finally, Hill makes a distinction between personal knowledge and knowledge that can be obtained from others. He observes that few individuals have all the expertise necessary for monumental achievements, and the ability to draw upon the knowledge of others, through collaboration, consultation, or hearing, amplifies one's own capabilities. This reinforces the idea that wealth creation is rarely a solo endeavor. Success often involves leveraging specialized knowledge in a coordinated, intelligent, and strategic way, whether through networks, teams, or alliances. By the end of Chapter 4, Hill has reframed knowledge as a tool, not an end in itself. Wealth and achievement are not determined by how much one knows, but by how effectively one identifies, organizes, applies, and combines knowledge with desire, faith, and action. Specialized knowledge empowers the individual to recognize opportunities, solve problems, and provide value in ways that general knowledge cannot. It is a critical step in translating internal mental principles into real-world outcomes. Chapter 5. Imagination, the workshop of the mind. In Chapter 5 of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill turns the reader's attention to imagination, describing it as the workshop where all plans are created and developed. If desire is the starting point, faith the sustaining force, autosuggestion the programming tool, and specialized knowledge the raw material, then imagination is the creative engine that transforms ideas into plans that can produce tangible results. Hill emphasizes that imagination is not merely artistic or abstract thinking. It is a practical, disciplined mental process that allows individuals to devise new methods, innovate solutions, and turn their desires into wealth and achievement. Hill begins by asserting that everything begins in the mind. Every fortune, invention, and successful endeavor was first conceived in someone's imagination. This principle applies universally, regardless of industry or circumstance. Wealth is created when individuals use their imagination to combine knowledge and desire into workable, actionable plans. Without imagination, even the strongest desire and faith cannot translate into real-world success because there is no pathway or method to achieve the goal. Hill distinguishes between two types of imagination: synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Synthetic imagination involves arranging existing concepts, ideas, and knowledge into new combinations or approaches. It is the type of imagination used in problem-solving, business innovation, and strategic thinking. For example, a businessman might take proven marketing techniques and apply them in a new context, or combine them in a unique way to reach untapped markets. Creative imagination, on the other hand, is inspired by flashes of intuition, often influenced by subconscious thought and external influences. It is less predictable, but can produce groundbreaking ideas, inventions, or insights. Both types are critical, but Hill emphasizes that synthetic imagination is the more practical and accessible tool for most people seeking wealth and achievement. A central theme in this chapter is the practical application of imagination. Hill warns against idle daydreaming, which lacks purpose and direction. The mind, he explains, can either become a playground for fantasy or a laboratory for achievement. When desire and faith are strong, and when autosuggestion programs the subconscious mind, imagination becomes a disciplined activity focused on generating ideas and plans that serve specific objectives. Visualization, planning, and experimentation are the methods through which imagination is converted into actionable results. Hill stresses that ideas themselves have no inherent value unless they are acted upon. Imagination is powerful only when combined with organized planning and execution. An individual may conceive brilliant concepts, but without persistent action, those ideas remain invisible potential. He underscores that wealth is not the product of mere thought, but of applied creativity. Imagination serves as the bridge between knowledge and achievement, converting abstract information and raw desire into practical strategies. The chapter also explores the role of imagination in recognizing opportunities and solutions. Hill notes that many individuals fail not because they lack ability or resources, but because they cannot see creative solutions to problems or opportunities that already exist. Imagination trains the mind to perceive possibilities, to combine existing resources in new ways, and to devise innovative methods for producing value. By exercising this faculty, one develops the capacity to overcome obstacles and create wealth in situations where others see only barriers. Hill connects imagination with persistence and collaboration. He observes that many successful individuals leverage the ideas of others, combining their own creative thinking with specialized knowledge and insights from a network of associates. Imagination, when shared and refined through collaboration, becomes exponentially more powerful. It is through this synthesis that many of history's great achievements, from inventions to business empires, have been realized. Another important concept in this chapter is the interplay between imagination and failure. Hill argues that setbacks and challenges are often catalysts for creativity. When existing methods fail, the mind is compelled to imagine alternatives, to innovate, and to explore solutions that would not have been considered under comfortable circumstances. In this way, adversity can stimulate imagination and generate opportunities for success that would otherwise remain unseen. Hill also emphasizes the practical techniques for developing imagination. One key method is stimulated thought, which involves consciously studying successes, failures, and strategies in various fields, then asking how these lessons might be applied in new or personal contexts. Another is the use of organized planning sessions or brainstorming with associates to combine ideas, knowledge, and experience into new solutions. These exercises train the mind to see beyond conventional thinking and to approach problems creatively. Crucially, Hill insists that imagination must always be directed by a definite purpose. Creativity without focus can lead to distraction or wasted energy. When imagination is aligned with desire, faith, and specialized knowledge, it becomes a precise tool for designing plans that produce results. Hill's examples show that those who succeed consistently are not necessarily more intelligent than others. They are more effective at applying imagination to purposeful action. By the conclusion of Chapter 5, Hill has positioned imagination as an indispensable instrument for turning mental potential into reality. Desire provides the fuel, faith provides the certainty, autosuggestion programs the subconscious, and specialized knowledge provides the raw material. But imagination shapes these elements into plans, strategies, and solutions that can be executed to produce wealth and achievement. It is the workshop where ideas become actionable blueprints and where creativity meets discipline, enabling individuals to overcome obstacles, seize opportunities, and convert vision into tangible outcomes. This chapter leaves the reader with a clear understanding. Success is not a product of luck or circumstance. It is the result of deliberate mental processes. By cultivating imagination, disciplined creativity, and the ability to see possibilities where others see problems. Individuals can transform desire and knowledge into practical, actionable plans that lead to lasting achievement. Imagination is the laboratory of success, and those who learn to use it intentionally have the power to create fortunes, influence, and life-changing results. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family.